The stage I never planned to take. A story of outrage, a little boy, and an unexpected kind of courage. Today is the morning of the third No Kings rally. I'll be marching with my son's in-laws in the town of Lexington, Massachusetts, where they live, a fitting place historically to be fighting against a king. We all have different strategies for dealing with challenging, frightening circumstances beyond our control. And the current national and international dangers we face are definitely overwhelming. In the face of the Trump regime's daily onslaught in so many aspects of our lives, it's natural to feel powerless, but it's not okay to stop there. We each have to find ways to personally speak out and become part of the growing resistance. And in the written version of this post, I have a woman holding a sign at a rally saying, "If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor." And that's a quote by Desmond Tutu. I've also always been a fan of this quote from Margaret Mead. "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed individuals can change the world. In fact, it's the only thing that ever has." Whenever we start believing that nothing we do can make a difference, it's helpful to look back over the course of our lives and recall times in the past when we demonstrated moral or physical courage. Writing can help flesh out these memories and give them visceral power. I've given the following prompt and written to it during many challenging moments when personal or collective courage were called for. Here's the prompt. Think back over your life. Tell me about a time you spoke out against injustice, a time you took action or helped change an unfair policy, a time you stood up on your own behalf or on behalf of someone else, regardless of the personal price you had to pay, a time you were an ally to someone. Think back. It may have been a big moment or a small one, a quiet one or a public one. Tell me the story of a time you challenged the status quo, confronted a bully or an abuser, broke a barrier, a glass ceiling, a closed club, or were part of changing history. Write about a time of courage from your personal history. You can write in response to this prompt, describe your memory to a friend, raise the question at the dinner table, or simply meditate on your response. In my life, there are a number of instances that I could choose to write about. The most obvious one comes from my late 20s and early 30s when I wrote and published The Courage to Heal, a guide for women survivors of child sexual abuse with Ellen Bass, back in 1988. That book cracked open the world for sexual abuse survivors, empowered hundreds of thousands, and continues to reverberate today. On a personal level, I paid a huge price for publishing that book, for speaking out publicly and naming my grandfather as my abuser. It led to years of estrangement from my family, and Ellen and I faced a huge backlash as co-authors of the most visible book for survivors at that time. The price I paid was high, but I've never regretted it for a moment. But the courage it took to write and publish The Courage to Heal isn't what I chose to write about today. When I thought about the prompt, another instance came to mind, an unexpected moment of courage that occurred soon after I came out as a lesbian in my early 20s. I poured out the story in a 20-minute writing practice. It was the only women's music festival I ever attended. I can't say what the year was, but it must have happened between the time I was 23 and 25, because I came out when I was 23 and moved to Alaska when I was 25 to work for Alaska Public Radio. So it had to have happened in those 2 years when I was busy coming out, reading lesbian erotic poetry at the Women's Coffee House in downtown Santa Cruz, strutting my triple Ds with a V-neck, skin-tight royal blue danskin, topped off with my purple felt hat, peacock feather tucked in the brim. I was feeling my oats, that was for sure. I don't recall who my lover was at the time. I had a lot of them, none lasting more than 2 or 3 months. An endless cycle of hot sex, declarations of love, alienation, and ultimately betrayal. Mine or hers, depending on the relationship. I was way too frisky and far too broken to sustain a relationship. But with my lover at the time, I ended up at the Women's Music Festival on some piece of land in Northern California in the heat of midsummer. It was my first. I'd never been one to go on pilgrimage to the Michigan Women's Music Festival. I'd never been drawn to radical lesbian separatism. I didn't like the hard edges and rigidity of that scene. I had a father I loved, and a brother I loved, and my best friend, who was straight, the person who'd sat me down at the Seagull Cellar Bar in Mendocino, California, over shots of tequila to tell me I was a lesbian, had a 7-year-old son I adored. I had men and boys in my life I loved. A flat-out rejection of the male of the species wasn't right for me. The music festival was filled with bare-breasted women, women of all sizes, gay and proud. I remember a lot of tattoos. The music was good on the big stage, and there were hardly any children. The gay-bee boom hadn't yet begun. Any kids there would have been born into straight marriages with mothers who came out later. The rule at the music festival was that boys were only allowed to attend up to the age of 7, and after that, no penises were permitted on the property. How incredibly dated that feels right now, thinking of gender as a simple duality based on genitals. But that's how things were in the lesbian world I came out in. Meg Williams was singing, or maybe it was Chris Williamson, or Holly Near, or Farron, the Canadian singer I was completely crushed out on. It's humiliating to admit, but I actually sent her a fan letter suggesting we get together sometime. The music was great, and I was sitting on a blanket soaking in the rays. There was a lot of drinking on the land, and lots of other drugs too. There was also a clean and sober contingent and drug-free zones. But the incident I remember involved a very drunk white woman with the short dyke haircut so popular at the time. I imagine her sunburned, holding one of those oversized red plastic cups full of foaming, cheap beer. Let's call it Coors. There was a little boy. He had to have been under 7. Let's say, for the sake of this story, that he was 4. The little boy was playing with a ball, and it got away from him. It either hit this woman or rolled into her space. She catapulted off her blanket and came after this little boy, got in his face, and started screaming, "You're just a little rapist. You men are all the same." As I leapt up to intervene, I remember the pinpoints of black in her eyes, the droplets of spit spewing out of her twisted mouth. She kept coming at him, screaming, "You all deserve to be castrated." Before her rage could connect with his terrified little body, I stepped between them, grabbed the boy, and shielded him in my arms. As I confronted her snarling face, I remember thinking, if you're what a lesbian is like, then I don't want to be one. I looked around me. The boy's mother was nowhere to be found. I brought him up to the stage so they could make a lost child announcement. Once mother and son were reunited, I organized 4 other lesbians to go up with me onto the main stage to read a statement I drafted in haste. I wish I still had it, but I can still recall what it said. It called out the unfairness of targeting boys with abuse, proclaiming how that moment of violence might have been enough to turn that little boy into a hater. This happened 45 years ago. The details are vague. But living in March of 2026, when the courage to stand up is called for, I want to remember my outrage, my willingness to step into the fray, to take a stand that was unpopular. Let's face it, thousands of lesbians were there to feel the freedom of being unencumbered by the expectations of the straight world, not to hear a speech about the rights of little boys and how they need to be protected. But I found my way onto that stage. I did not hesitate, not for a moment. I used the power of the pen and took a stand. And I never went to another women's music festival again. Writing this story, remembering my lack of hesitation confronting injustice publicly, inspires me today. Most of us have past experiences that we could draw on, times we displayed courage. These moments may have been personal or quiet, visible or public, but we need to bring them to mind now. I'm asking you to recall a time you found your own strength and bravery, and in doing so, made a difference in your own life or someone else's. Please share your story with us in the comments below. And once again, here's the prompt. Think back over your life. Tell me about a time you spoke out against injustice, a time you took action or helped change an unfair policy, a time you stood up on your own behalf or on behalf of someone else, regardless of the personal price you had to pay, a time you were an ally to someone. Think back. It may have been a big moment or a small one, a quiet one or a public one. Tell me the story of a time you challenged the status quo, confronted a bully or an abuser, broke a barrier, a glass ceiling, a closed club, or were part of changing history. Write about a time of courage from your past. I invite you to share in the comments below. I also want to tell you today about a chance to study with me for free. Next month, I'm going to be teaching a workshop, Flourishing as We Age, a free online writing workshop, on Saturday, April 18th from 10 to noon Pacific time, 1 to 3 Eastern time. It'll be on Zoom. And I want to tell you a little bit about it. Aging isn't just about getting older. It's about navigating all that comes with it. The losses, the changes, the unexpected discoveries along the way. In this free 2-hour writing workshop with me, hosted by Gail Warner, you'll use writing as a tool to explore what matters most to you now. No writing experience required, only a willingness to show up honestly on the page. This workshop offers a taste of the deeper work I'll be doing with people at a 7-day Flourishing as We Age retreat in Santa Cruz in June. The free workshop will be recorded if you can't make it to the live event, and to register, I will put the link in the show notes. I hope you will join us. The Writer's Journey is a reader-supported publication. To receive new posts and support my work, consider becoming a free or paid subscriber. And again, the link will be in the show notes. Thanks so much for listening, and I will be with you next week with another edition of The Writer's Journey.